Coaching as Benevolence, a podcast for people who are curious about using coaching for self-development. I'm Eryn with Roots and Wings Grief and Loss Coaching.
And I'm LaShawn with Michelle Sage Place Positive Intelligence Coaching. All right, today we are going to continue looking at our guided journal, Coaching Nuggets of Wisdom to Inspire, Explore, Act, Flourish, a guided journal to live your best life. We are looking at the first section, which is Inspire. And if you're joining us for the first time, last week we did start looking at the prompts and talking about the journal. But if you're joining us for the first time, we are going through the journal and talking about the prompts. So we encourage you to, if you haven't already, to purchase the journal, which you can find the link in the description of this episode. And you can find it on Amazon if you just put in the title. What we're going to be doing is just going through the prompts. This is a way to support you on your journey as you go through the guided journal. Another great thing to do is to do this with a friend or a group of friends. You can download the episodes that we publish for the different prompts, and then you can listen to it together if you can't do it on Wednesday morning when this drops at 8 a.m. Mountain Time. All right, we begin with prompt 2, and I'm going to read the prompt and say a few things and then turn it over to Eryn so she can add her wisdom as well and her insight. Opportunity blooms from challenges and losses. It also blooms from wins and growth. Take a moment to reflect on your recent growth. It is there, even when it feels like it is not. What is it for you? Is it stemming from a challenge, a win, or something in the middle? How do you feel when you reflect on your growth? Often, feelings across the spectrum of excitement and dread to self-doubt and self-belief show up in these moments. Tell yourself, bring it on. Because when we embrace growth, we know that it is not perfect and at times can be difficult. This makes you human. Reflect on your expansion, becoming a porous, open container of yourself as you take up more space, learn new things, and embrace your inspired self. I love the images of blossoms and blooming because right now in Colorado, things are just coming to life. This happens every spring to me. It's like I'm driving around and the trees that were, brown and had no leaves and no blossoms on them, no flowers. All of a sudden, everywhere I look, there's these trees that have white blossoms. And now there's these beautiful, deep pink, kind of purple blossoms. And it's such an exciting time. And this comes back to the line where it says at the very beginning, it is there even when it feels like it is not. That is something that I think spring really reveals to us. We know that this doesn't just happen overnight. This is something that has been taking place underneath the surface. We haven't seen all of the things that go into a leaf or a bud coming out. So there's a lot of things happening underneath the surface. And often we might feel like progress is stagnant or nothing is happening, but really things are happening underneath the surface. And when you are making small incremental changes, those eventually lead to something bigger. But it's those small incremental changes that are happening day to day that we don't notice that are going to lead to those bigger changes that are more obvious. And it's not just something that just spontaneously happens. It happens with small shifts that occur that we may not be aware of. Eryn, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so hopefully I can capture this because you talked about the blooming in the spring, being aware of changes that are not being aware of changes that are actually happening underneath the surface. And when you were talking about the blooming, we've had such drought conditions here in Colorado, which has been awful for the environment. However, as things have bloomed this spring, they bloom a little bit brighter, a little bit earlier. So I kind of think of this metaphor of this blooming brighter and a little bit earlier amidst the hardship, right? Amidst the not ideal conditions and what that might be for each of us. And it's not, and it may not be a a drought year for us personally. It might be something a little bit less or a little slightly nuanced. But I love this visual you brought with the spring and how things are kind of happening underneath the surface. And we probably are pretty unaware of that. And that's why I love this prompt and love this journal, because it helps people pay attention to those things with more intention and curiosity. And I think that that is where we gain inspiration to take more meaningful action and take those small steps as well. So I love how you nuanced that first part of this prompt, and it really resonated a lot with me. And when it says to take a moment to reflect on your growth, it is there even when it feels like it is not. I think that that sentence, it is there even when it feels like it is not, is really helpful, because we might see that we have an abundance year and still feel like we're not growing, or we may be in our desert years and still not feel like we're growing. But when we can pay attention, we will notice at least a few things that are blooming within us or growing within us. And that is often amidst the hardship. So I think that that extra sentence there is really helpful for not only me, but hopefully for our listeners and readers as they take this journal on their own journey and reflect on a growth moment recently. And so, we give you an additional prompt for that. Is it stemming from a challenge? Is it a win? Or just something in the middle every day, day to day with your growth? And I think for me, I'm more in that middle space right now. And so I would probably likely want to journal about what that is and where growth is showing there. Because for me personally, the middle space might mean contentment, which is where I want to be. However, as someone who's not always familiar with contentment, it feels almost like a foreign place. And so just being able to hold the container of contentment in my life right now, that is a growth moment for me. And I'm doing that, and I'm not fully doing that yet. And I have ways to improve on that, but that's just a growth moment that I've noticed by processing this prompt aloud and then thinking through it with you, LaShawn. So I'll send it back over to you for the first kind of parts there. Anything else you want to add, or any of your growth moments and how those are showing up?
And I want to say that I love that you're in that moment of being in the middle and holding space for your contentment, which is a great, for me, I just love that you're in that space right now, because that is where I am not. I am not in that space. I would say I'm coming from a challenge, just a challenge of balancing all of the things that are expected of me, things that are happening in my life that are big things that require full-time attention and effort, but these are multiple things. And it's easy to get overwhelmed with the thought of what needs to get done and what is catching my attention, I should say, on so many. And it's like I have an abundance of complexities in my life right now. So I would say this is an abundant time, an abundance of challenges for me. I would use this prompt as a way to hold space for that. Like hold space for all of the things that are happening all at once. Mm-hmm. And what's coming to mind is the need for appreciation, because I think it's really easy to see all of these different things that are unfolding in different aspects of my life, to see them with like a negative or a critical lens, as what did we do wrong, or what did I do wrong, or what's going wrong, but rather see it as a time of great expansion and growth. And as a result, there's more that's revealing itself. Maybe it's an idea that my perspective is expanded and I'm able to take on these challenges, maybe in that way. So I would definitely use this as a way to explore that and take the time, rather than just like putting out fires, is figuring out where I'm at on all the different levels, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, physically. There's so many things that are just like revealing themselves. And rather than seeing them as a sign of things going wrong, I could see them as a sign of growth and a sign of needing attention needing time to reflect, maybe needing time to slow down as well. So those are some things that are coming up for me as I am processing the many questions. I love this prompt because it's so layered. There's so many levels of contemplation and exploration here. Of course, this is about inspiration, and it's done in such a way that it's layered, and it guides you through this journey of discovery, I would say, in terms of where you're at in the growth process and reflecting on a recent growth moment or a time of growth. And I would say that I am definitely in a period of my life of expansion. And there's a lot of different changes, and it's happening so fast. So it's a matter of just taking the time to take stock of all of the things that are happening and also how I'm showing up and how I want to show up.
With, your repeated word of expansion is interesting because it's also in this prompt, and it's, I think, aligns with that a lot. And then when you were talking about kind of these new professional duties and then all the other things you're holding right now, I could see this statement then that said, often feelings across the spectrum of excitement and dread to self-doubt and self-belief show up in these moments. And I could see in your body language too, moments of hesitation or self-doubt, and then moments of confidence and self-belief, which I thought was really interesting because when we're in growth, we may not always see those or recognize those. And if it's positive, it's positive. If it's not, it doesn't feel that way. So this allows for more nuance for people to really go deep with themselves in this inspired category of this journal through this second prompt, so that when there is the opportunity to move through the other prompts and sections of the journal, there is this expansion, there is this self-knowing that guides oneself into a place that feels more aligned and feels embraceable. And when I think of embraceable, I think about it on a few levels. I'm going to embrace the moment, or I'm going to feel that embrace feeling and that contained feeling by having insight and agency over my life. And so I really like how you reflected on that. And then I want to go back because you did mention multiple levels, and that's not necessarily in the prompt, but I think it's such a beautiful way to show our listeners and readers how to, layer in things that maybe aren't in the prompt, but have strong meaning to this prompt as well. So you were talking about your professional, personal, all those areas of your life that are kind of in this expansion phase. So I want to go back to that phase. And then I want to also go back to what you said about the journal itself. I think that it's a layered guide through the journey of self-discovery or through the journey of discovery. And I love how you said layered guide there. So those are two things that really stuck out to me. So maybe let's go back first, or whichever feels best to you, to your multi-layered examples here, and maybe kind of nuance those a little bit more if you feel comfortable.
Like my multi-layered examples of what's going on in my life, or
yeah, or you had mentioned in your response to this, growth is happening on various layers.
Yeah, so growth is happening on various levels. It's not just career, it's also my family life. Things are shifting. I think this is true for a lot of people my age. As our parents get older, they have to deal with their own mortality, and it's they're faced with their own mortality. And as an adult child who is on one end, with my mother specifically, I wouldn't say a caregiver because she's quite independent, but there's still that layer, and that's changing as well, that whole situation, and it's precarious, and every day it's different. And then my in-laws are also aging, and they're dealing with various health issues, which then my role is one of supporter to my spouse, to my husband, who has a complicated relationship with his parents and his family, and all of these things start coming out, emotions. And this I want to go back to that layer in this prompt about feeling across. So going to the second paragraph, how do you feel when you reflect on your growth? Often feelings across the spectrum of excitement and dread to self-doubt and self-belief show up in these moments. And I would say that we just have a cornucopia of emotions going on in our lives right now in terms of just the nuance and the complexity of being in a relationship with in-laws and parents who, for whatever reason, the relationship is not as solid as you would like in the moment, where if the relationship were solid, if the relationship were built on a very strong foundation, that it would be easier to kind of slide into a role of caregiver. But when you have all this complexity and there's so much in that, it just really makes it a challenge. And then there's the expectations that the world has of an adult child who has aging parents who are dealing with medical issues, that there's this sense that you're going to be there for them and you're going to support them and there's a lot of self-sacrifice that's expected of adult children, especially women. I think that is an expectation in our culture and in society, this sense that daughters are going to step up and be the caregiver. Sons too. I've seen it with sons as well. I mean, we had that with Sharon's son with the Parkinson's episode that we had, an example of great self-sacrifice, but in a sense that it was like a calling. It was almost like he was the champion, or this was something that he needed to dedicate his whole life to. And I think there's this expectation of that. And so with that expectation of adult children with aging and ailing parents, there's a sense that, you're just going to ease into that role, or that's just going to be a natural progression in your relationship with your parents, not taking into account history of abuse, disrespect, dismissal, that kind of thing doesn't seem to really be taken into account. People don't really see that. So there's that complexity there. And then my own family, my own children, I have 2 neurodivergent children, and the challenges that presents for them, it's just coming just into the foreground. It's no longer just kind of underneath the surface. It is definitely blossomed. And I don't know exactly.
And all of this, and to highlight, all of this is happening at the same time.
At the same time.
Yeah.
All of this is happening at the same time in very, very short period of time. Like we're talking weeks. All of this is coming into fruition now. So it's a lot to take in. And it feels like, that these things are coming up, and it's easy to just like deal with it and kind of the temporary solution, the short-term solution, but it's not necessarily, and it could be detrimental to the long-term solution or outcome. And so it's that balancing of, surviving the moment and preparing for a more sustainable future or sustainable outcome, but really just getting through what's happening now, knowing that this is a result of things that were left undone or unsaid or unaddressed, and knowing that you need to take some time to unpack that and come up with a plan.
Sorry, I'm so curious. I'm going to ask you another question, but you mentioned earlier how this is this expansion. So through having all these most recent challenges, what has been the expansion for you? What has been that growth for you? And then I also just want to highlight for our listeners and just anybody who's a human being, seeing the people in front of you, right? Like you're having to make so many more decisions right now, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that feels incredibly hard. So, maybe it isn't recognizing growth right now, but just wanted to ask. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I would say the expansion is just being able to hold it all. I think like maybe I'm thinking in terms of if I were to compare where I was, let's say a year ago, and this were to happen a year ago, I don't know that I would be as equipped to handle a lot of the things that are happening. Just the expansion would be more tools, more resources, more avenues to navigate or to choose from, greater agency, and also just the realization that this is not something that I'm doing on my own, or that I would have to do alone. So just community, resources, and the tools to access those resources. That's not something that I had maybe a year ago, but now I have it now. And I feel like these things are happening now, and I'm able to carry them as opposed to letting them fall, and not that that would be a bad thing, but I feel that the expansion would be my capacity to hold all of these things.
And hold them with different ways, through tools, through community, through your own process of growth that you've gone through.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate that you highlighted all of those.
Yeah,
it's always, we often might see a challenge from the ancillary viewpoint, but when you really dig into the human experience within that, right, there's a lot happening. And I almost get a little turned off by, but also like this as well, the statement of tell yourself, bring it on, because I find that empowering for me, because I used to always view anything that was like a challenge or conflict or something as really bad, right? Like it was like the sky was falling bad. And I had so much control in my life that if I controlled how I studied, how I worked, how I, spent time with friends, etc., then I would have this clear path of not having challenges or not having as many challenges, right? And that was very naive. And really when Evelyn passed right before I turned 29, that's when my viewpoints kind of started to shift out of necessity, but also out of just a deeper understanding. And so while that's not the point in my life that I would have liked having something like that happen, on the other end of it, there is a level of growth and a little bit more of a capacity to tell myself to bring it on for challenges and things that are hard and things I don't have control over, all those things. And through that, still recognize growth or recognize some of the wins within that, even if they're really small. And I know that might go back to practices of, not only reflection and journaling, but gratitude and perspective shifting and a bunch of different things. But it's just, I can't believe, I can so feel this so viscerally that, in my 20s, I was like, I'm in control of everything. I've got this, right? And now my viewpoint couldn't be any more different. Through my viewpoint being more different, that's the paradox. I have more control, more self-belief, more tools, more abilities to say, okay, bring this on. Maybe it's not what I want right now, but I know that I can get through this. I know that I can, have the support of others as well, and do, all those things that prior to, being a 20-some-year-old, never even would have thought that way at all. So I don't know. I really see that there are these moments that have helped me shift in my thinking in different ways. And then there are the also regressions. So it's like, oh, bring it on. But I'm like, no, I don't want that much of a challenge. No, I don't need that right now. All those things that I want to talk back to that, again, I don't have agency over. And so for me, the growth is going back to, what do I have agency over within myself? And it's more so about how I feel even than maybe certain skills, for instance, or certain professional aptitudes, or, it's just there is a level of growth for me that I think is more about a little bit of patience. I've struggled with patience my entire life, but a little bit of patience, and then progress with the brokenness of it all, right? The brokenness of myself, the brokenness of the world, all of those things. And that's the goal, I think, a lot of times, right, when we talk about the world today and the political circumstances that people are swimming in, and it's like, how do we stay afloat or buoyant through things that maybe don't align with our values or things like that? And I think that this prompt is a great way to explore that. It's a great way to consider what is in your realm of influence right now and what isn't, and you don't have to take it all on, right? It's really not that way. But anyway, I kind of find this prompt taking me in a lot of different directions with really it makes me really feel into who I was and who I am now, I guess, and how I thought that I always would have so much control in a certain way, and just how unhealthy that was. I like the humanness of this prompt, and I can see how it can lead to more inspiration as people go through each of the prompts in the journal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, like you're saying, there's just so much that unfolds when you go through the different questions and the different paragraphs that are in the prompt itself. So there's so many ways to look at your growth. And as with anything that we present in this podcast, you can take what resonates and leave what doesn't. So for example, if bring it on is something that just really doesn't resonate with you, then that's something that, that would be information in itself, and also something that you could leave for another time. And different times in our lives, like I remember when I actually said that, the episode that we were talking about, or the episode that was in, and how I felt in that moment, this sense of empowerment and this sense of I'm ready for this, like I can take this. And now, with all of the things that are going on in my life, when I think of Bring It On, like you, Eryn, I have mixed feelings about that, because part of me is like, please no more, if I can take any more. The other is saying that with such conviction and certainty, I think really does allow for like a fortification of the soul, like bring it on. Like
Yeah.
it's like you're not running anymore. You're not hiding anymore. You're just like turning to face the foe, or turning to face the challenge. And you're in the fighting stance, and you're ready to go. So all that energy that you're using in avoidance would then be used for the solution and being more proactive. So when I see that phrase, bring it on, I think of being proactive, I think of action, and also empowerment. So it's a choice that you're making. So there's agency there too. So
Can I
there's
say
a
something
lot. Yeah,
really
sure. Go
quick? I
ahead.
love what you're talking about here. And I love what you said about, I had it in my head. And I'm like, I'm going to lose this. I'm going to lose this. But what you said about bring it on, about, the energy. Yes. So the energy it takes to turn and face the situation, you can put that energy into that versus avoidance or worrying or fearfulness or all those things. And I love that empowering image as you were talking that I got from that. Just like, I'm just going to put my energy into facing this. Yeah. I love that. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely, it's an uplifting thought to turn and face it. Like it's, it kind of goes back to what Morgan said about burning the boat. You're not giving yourself an out. You're facing it. And if you burn the boats, you can't go back. You have to keep going forward. You have to face those challenges, whether you get through it or not. This is your moment, and it's a choice to take it on instead of avoid it. So there's so much energy and effort that goes into avoidance. I mean, I don't want to say it's not productive, because I don't want to like put judgment on it, but my experience has been, when I turn and face something, I feel like I can make more progress. But if I'm avoiding, I'm spending so much energy and time avoiding, and that's all. There's no product that comes out of that, except for maybe, more I don't know, like guilt and shame around it. But anyway, that's another thing altogether. But I do feel more, positive, or I lean more towards the facing the challenge than running and hiding, or not, just avoiding it. Just seems more promising to face the challenge. Then even if you're defeated, there's like, unless it kills you, then you can rebuild, maybe. But
Yeah.
anyway, those are some thoughts that I have. But yeah, this is I would say this is a very rich prompt. Lots and lots of things. And to go back to it at different phases in your life would be interesting to see what is revealed.
Yeah. And then going on to the last sentence where it says, reflect on your expansion, becoming a porous, open container of yourself as you take up more space, learn new things, and embrace your inspired self. And really, there's no way around that. You will have to take up more space and you will learn new things. And then through all of that, that gives you the confidence to embrace your inspired self, right? To feel equipped through inspiration, to know that even as you take up more space, it may not be the most beautiful space, or there might not be the cleanest space, right? And that's okay. The thought that you took on a challenge and met growth, and also remembering that it's not just about challenges. You are in your contentment period, mm-hmm. And what is your growth? And you're in your winning era. And what is your growth there? So I don't know. Are we kind of circling in on a coaching nugget of wisdom at this point?
Yeah, or a call to action.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Do you have something you want to share, or do you want me to go?
Yeah, I guess I would share that my call to action would be very similar to kind of how I ended my previous comment. I would encourage our listeners to respond to this prompt, but also to come back to it in different phases in your growth, because I think this would reveal different perspectives and different experiences that you're having. And so although there's, this one prompt and this one sitting that you have, I would encourage you to come back to it, after a few months or a year, and see where you're at.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that it aligns with the inspired section overall and going back for that inspiration. And I think another piece of the inspiration might be to reflect through journaling, or maybe through talking with someone, reflect on what it is that maybe you can face and what it is that you feel too scared to face, and maybe kind of see where the inspiration lies within those two questions.
Thanks for joining us for Coaching as Benevolence. I'm LaShawn with Mayshell Sage Place, Positive Intelligence Coaching.
And I'm Eryn with Roots and Wings, Grief and Loss Coaching.
Have a benevolent day.